We are live. Nathaniel Gillis, it is a pleasure to have you here, man.
Yeah.
Welcome. How
Thank you
are
for
you?
having me on, man. It's great to be with you. It's one of the privileges of being in the field, and it's one of my greatest honors to meet people like you. And I love that. That's why I'm in this, to meet people that are like-minded and that are open-minded enough to do this research. So thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. I'm really excited to have you here, and the feeling's mutual, by the way, because I
Thank you.
think that, and we'll show this off right away, which is very
Yeah.
exciting. But you did not only was it awesome that you got on you were invited to Danny Jones's show, but
Yeah.
I texted you while I was listening to your episode, and I was like, listening to you blow his mind might be one of my highlights of the day. And one of the fun
Yeah.
things about it is that you don't it doesn't appear to me like you like to exclude any kind of data points or information. And a lot of people, once they have kind of working theories as to what the perspective is on whatever you want to call it, spirituality,
Mhm.
the world, rationality, demonology, the cult, anything you want, whatever term you want to use. I feel like we have our purview and our lens that we see through.
Yeah.
And then if data points come along that we don't know what to do with, we tend to disregard them, and it seems like you do a pretty good job trying to be all inclusive with it.
I try to. And it's interesting to see the responses I'm getting from the Danny Jones interview. I've been accused of being a Satanist.
Mm,
Um,
sure.
because people don't know what to do with my research.
Right.
And so they're like, what box can I put him in? And so for many, I'm too sacred to the secular. And to the secular, it's the sacred, I'm too secular, and to the secular, I'm too sacred. And so it's like they're just trying to put me in a box and they don't know. Like I said, will do with me. So it's not that I'm a bad guy. It's not that the research isn't valid or valuable. It's just I refuse to obey dogma, and I hold to the data. It's been difficult because we all have our own biases, we have our own presuppositions, and so I'll come across cases or a data set, and I'm just like, this is crazy. But it's so that's how I built my framework. Um, but it has been interesting to see the many responses.
Yeah.
It's funny because even now that we're talking, there are people that are out there that were my friends. I thought we were in good standing. And then I get onto a big platform that perhaps they wanted to be on or something. And then next thing you know, Nathaniel's a fraud, a grifter, all this
Yeah.
stuff. And it is kind of, it's like, man, where did that come from? Or like I've had people that have wanted me on their shows and I just forgot to get back to them. Next thing I know, I find out that they're trashing me on X and Nathaniel's this. It's like, what are we doing, guys? What are we really doing? I'm not in it for fame. I'm in it for money. I'm in it for the data. And a lot of these, jockeying for positions, it doesn't really affect me. If they
Hmm.
want to play that game, go ahead. But it doesn't do anything to move the research further.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just reveals the heart of
Sure.
who some of these people really are. Um, with that said, can you hear me? I'm not too close to my microphone. Is it okay? Can you hear me at all?
Yeah,
We good?
yeah. And also the what do you call it? I have it. The AI will
Okay,
stabilize the audio anyway.
that's
But
fine.
yeah, be
Because I didn't
comfortable.
want to be all over the microphone, like "Hello,
Sure.
very well." But yeah, that's where I'm at, and it has been difficult. I've had just you can't help but alienate people when you come to your own conclusions. There are people that are
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
agree with you, and they can't disagree without disrespect. And it's like, I played in that hand too, way back in the day, early on, where I was like, okay, this is not working. But yeah, that's not to say that we're not collecting data. The field is moving forward, but I think that some of the darker aspects of the phenomenon are going to be disclosed here soon, and I don't think people are prepared. People say they are, right? Of course. Well, I know how to handle it. No, you don't. You don't even know what you're going to be handling. So how do
Yeah.
you know for sure you can handle it?
Yeah.
And
Wait,
we can get into
so
that.
wait, can you just give, I'm
Yeah,
sorry to cut you off already, but give, if anyone has no idea for any kind of context what
yeah,
we're talking about,
right.
just maybe one or two examples or case studies of things that we
Yeah.
wouldn't know what to do with that, are
Well,
exciting because it seems science fiction-esque until you realize that this could actually kind of affect our lives and like
yeah.
our families and kids, and like we should be studying it.
Well, yeah. So right now, within the disclosure movement, because I'm going to preface this particular instance with what's going on, Colm Kelleher wrote an article. Colm Kelleher was a lead scientist at the Skinwalker Ranch. He was
Mm,
this
sure.
parapsychologist that was leading the efforts of the National Institute of Discovery Science, Robert Bigelow's group.
Mhm,
And he wrote an article talking about what's called the hitchhiker effect. So essentially, what happens is if you and I were to see a craft in the sky, that initial encounter is not where the phenomenon ended. Something would go home with you. And the greatest explanation I've heard is some kind of paranormal pathogen, a
mhm,
virus, if you will. It comes knocking on your door at night, and you're like, "What is this?" Um, but in this article, he highlights some of the darker aspects of the hitchhiker effect. And at first blush, I thought, well, okay, maybe it's shadow figures,
mhm,
that these researchers dealt with in the
mhm.
house. It wasn't just shadow figures. It ended up being apparitions of dead children.
That was following this head scientist from, Skidwalker Ranch home.
Yes, yes. In addition
Wow.
to him, Jay
Wouldn't an
Stratton.
apparatus an apparatus would just be like a vague kind of image or
Yeah.
not 3D kind of picture? How would you describe that?
They were described as apparitional. Now, that's, yeah,
Using the
right.
word in the definition as the
Yeah, definition. Now, the idea though is an apparition. Again, there's a spectrum there. There are full bodied apparitions like the one I encountered in my youth, where it would just be like you seeing your wife. You would have no idea. Like there are big cases like that. Virginia Ramirez ran into her daughter at a haunting. Like, her house is haunted, right? She runs into her daughter. It wasn't her daughter at all. Her daughter came home 2 hours later, home from work.
Whoa.
So what I'm saying is, yeah, so the
Was it a
apparition
joke?
it's no, it was the phenomenon, and so she thought she's interacting. What she did really, the apparition, her daughter, whatever, walked by her, and she's like, "Okay, that's funny. You're home from work early." And like 2 hours later, she comes back home, like, "Hi, mom. How was your day?"
Oh my
So
god.
my point though is, we say the term apparitional, but there's a spectrum present there, and so some of
Mhm,
them are translucent
mhm,
and you see the form, right?
mhm,
Enough to make sense of who, or at least what kind of being they are.
mhm.
And then other apparitions, or they fall underneath the umbrella of apparition, but they look like they're flesh
Wow.
and blood. My point, though, is it was more the shadow figures that followed these researchers home. Again, it's apparitions of dead children. And people are not prepared for that kind of research because everybody is kind of stuck within the niche field of ufology where it's cool, nuts and bolts, and we're just looking at aliens.
Mhm,
And what these researchers, which again, they were part of the most funded program in history regarding the paranormal,
mhm.
they concluded that we've got a problem here because we compartmentalize this intelligence and we thought that hauntings are in hauntology, in the UFOs, it's completely different fields of research and different manifestations, and
Mm,
included that that's not the case at all. Whatever we're dealing with will manifest in your house, will manifest as entities and people. And next thing you know, you're stuck with the paranormal pathogen
sure.
you don't know how to get rid of. And I need everybody to understand this too. We're not talking about a one night haunting. We're talking about
It's repeated.
for years,
whoa. D
years. So it's one UFO sighting, okay? And that could last for as little as 15 seconds to 2 minutes,
Right, right.
and then 5 years of a malevolent haunting.
Wow.
So where I'm at right now
Mhm.
is okay if it's 2 minutes maximum of witnessing a UFO, but it's 5 years of experiencing a malevolent haunting, who's to say we're not really studying ufology?
Yeah.
What if we're actually studying a haunting and that's really the intelligence we're dealing with? It flips everything on its head, and people aren't going to be prepared for that, I don't believe.
No, no. I have I have a couple of follow-up thoughts and maybe
Yeah.
ideas. I did an interesting episode with a woman, a doctor who's a marine biologist and musician named Heather Spence. And one thing that she does is she studies and music and acoustics in the water, which is
Okay.
very interesting. And you know, and she and I were talking about dolphins, and we were talking about the way that they see, but they also use echolocation to be able to see. They use essentially another sense to see
Yeah.
another an additional dimension. And she actually joked because I told her I sold ultrasound machines for a living,
Mhm.
and she's like, when you do an ultrasound on a baby dolphin, the baby actually interacts with the sound waves because it sees it. We don't know what it's seeing, but it's
Right, but
experiencing
it's
something.
responding, yeah.
And you know, and that led us down the conversation of essentially saying that human beings, are stubborn because the only thing that we will ever acknowledge exists comes within the purview of the megahertz
No.
frequency that we can hear
Mhm.
and the visual,
Absolutely.
spectrum that we can see, and if not,
Right.
then forget about it. And
Mhm.
this seems to be some kind of weird, you know, this seems to be like, why would we ever assume that life doesn't that nothing could exist that is beyond the scope of what we can do?
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
then you get to this aspect of them or not being invisible, but at least we can't perceive them, right?
Right,
So
and
it's
it's
not
not
that they're
invisible, it just exists in a
right.
just
There we
in
go.
a different way.
And that has to be clarified. Absolutely. But furthermore, if you have an entity that chooses to be visible to you
Mhm.
and the interface it chooses to use with you
Yeah.
is a deceased child, do we realize how sick that is?
Well, we don't know we
Mm.
so here's the problem. That's looking at this from a human view, no? Meaning we as humans think that's
Yeah.
sick. This as whatever it might be, say the way that I'm gonna not scare the life out of you is by popping up as something familiar, and, like, it might inadvertently
Yeah.
be a negative we don't know,
Well,
we
I
ascribe
will
human purpose intentions to these kind of things.
well, I think that again, a lot of this is couched in language. How
Yes.
would they know that these children are deceased and not just right? So what they're talking about, the apparitions of deceased children, it triggered my mind. Years ago, well, not years and years ago, but 2019, I gave a Zoom lecture on incubi entities, and in the like there's like 13 other people there. At the very end, they had a Q&A session, as they do, and unbeknownst to me, there was an experiencer on the top left corner.
Mhm.
He's an elderly gentleman, and all right, I'm not. Hopefully, I don't get you demonetized. This is a really interesting story, but he's like, he goes, he's like, I'm an abductee because I don't believe any of this stuff, and spirits and all that. He goes, but I was abducted along with my wife before she passed, and he's like, a week after our abduction. This is what we're talking. This is what he's talking about. Lakatsky is and Clone Color. It really freaks me out. He said a week after our abduction, we're sleeping in the middle of the night. It's like 3 in the morning or whatever, 9, and there's rustling underneath my covers. And he's like, at first blush, I thought it was my wife adjusting her body to get comfortable. And he said, underneath the covers, you could see this head lifting itself up.
Oh my god. My soul
And
would leave my body.
oh, brother, people don't understand. People think this is Hollywood. Right? Like, well, okay, again, they kind of frame what they think the phenomenon could be through the lens of a camera.
Mhm.
This isn't Hollywood. They couldn't make this stuff in Hollywood and sell movies. But anyways, his story, at least, was that it's lifting its head up and it's under the covers. And he goes, finally, it stands up and it's only like maybe 2 feet tall. And he throws the blanket over and there's a little girl in the bed. And he's like, "Nathaniel," he goes, "You don't have to believe it or not." He's like, "But I physically picked her up. There was weight to her."
Whoa.
And he's like, "But when I'm looking at her," he goes, "My eyes are adjusting to the darkness, and I'm starting to notice that there are burns all over her body. Like her hair is burned off." And he said she proceeds to tell me her name's Elizabeth or something, and that she is dead and her brother is dead, and they both died in a house fire. And she said, "And I'm not alone in this room. My brother's in the corner." And he said, "I looked in the corner of the room. There's a little boy there." I didn't know what to do with that. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know where to put
I
that.
say I don't
What
believe in
is that?
spirits and stuff after that.
Exactly right. That was his right. That's his whole point. Was like, yeah, I got to tell you the story because I don't know what happened. But what I'm looking at here are the collapsing of different compartments, I guess, of
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
phenomenon, to where there are no more ologies. What we do have, at least from the data, is an entity or an intelligence that goes home with people, and the interfaces it chooses to weaponize
Mhm,
are very troubling. Many of them, again, are shadow figures, and not just that, but there's fear and terror emanating off of them. And so you have these researchers who are just their husbands, their wives, their children
mhm.
are
Sure.
experiencing this hitchhiker effect. And the problem is, like, what is the point?
Yeah,
Because, we can hypothesize and theorize the whole day about, well, it doesn't want you to tell a story. That's exactly what they're going to do.
right.
If they don't tell you about the shadow figures, the apparitions, they're going to tell you about the craft in the sky. And it can't simply be, well, a control mechanism, right? Now, I love Valet's work, obviously, but I think there's something deeper, more profound going on, because you're going to tell me, okay, you witnessed me for 30 minutes and I'm going to be hanging out with you for 5 years. Again, what we researchers are doing are looking for pathology. We're looking for intentions and motives, but even that fails. It's almost as if people are confusing intention here. They're saying, well, it's the hitchhiker effect because the phenomenon doesn't want you to go out and tell everybody you witnessed it. But it's like for 5 years,
Yeah.
it's almost like what we're confusing it to where it's like, no, that was the real phenomenon in the house. Everything else may have been theater.
If
I don't know.
that's the case, that's interesting. I'm reading a book now, that I'm sure you've come across, Poisoner in Chief, by Stephen Kinzer. And,
Yeah,
and one thing that we know that at least the American government, but also the Chinese, Russians,
yeah,
lots of other governments is variations of with people's with no knowledge to any
yeah,
of these victims, they do things to drive them crazy, essentially, whether it be
yeah.
drugs, whether it be energy, whether it be radiation, it could be a combination of different factors.
Mhm.
That what would you say to the idea that a lot of that a lot of these experiences be chalked up to a combination of advanced technology and psychological mind control and stuff like that?
To a degree, to a degree.
Because,
Um,
like, what do you do with those data points then? Like, for example, if that story you just mentioned with that gentleman that said, "I don't know what to do with this," I could imagine I probably lost my mind. I smoke a lot of weed. I drink alcohol, and I just lost my
yeah,
mind, and I can
it
never
would
happen again, and I went crazy.
I think that is what's going on, and people are and I think there's reasons to assume this, but they're assuming that a lot of these whistleblowers are just disappearing or, hurting themselves because they can't take disclosure.
Mhm.
I don't think, again, that people are prepared for the lengths the phenomenon's willing to go.
Right.
I was told by a confidant that I'm connected to, and he's very connected to the field, and he's like, I said, what's going on with these scientists? It's like, okay, it's not new. This same wave of missing scientists, dead
Mhm.
or alive, occurred in the
Yeah.
70s. And I said, what's going on? It's like they're all like, none of them can take it. He said, no, 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 no. He said, those who are briefed on it and can handle the information, he's like, they're being taken out by the phenomenon.
Oh,
S-
so you're
It,
to maintain control.
yes. And then those who are briefed on it and can't take it, they end up hurting themselves. And so there's kind of a double-edged sword there. But it goes back to this idea of what are we really dealing with?
Mhm.
You
Would you
know,
call this spiritual?
do what? I'm sorry.
Would you call this spiritual?
I
It's not
think there
really
was,
exclusively,
yeah,
right?
not exclusively spiritual. No, there is a physical component to this. This is why people like John Keel authored or coined terms like paraphysicality, and they arrived here from the super spectrum. And then you have Gary Nolan and other pathologists who say that there's a
Yeah.
biodome here. There's something there, like a shadow biodome or something, where these beings exist. I'm more along the lines of the ultra terrestrial model, but I believe they're here,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And there's evidence with Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Merrow's work, where they found, and it's called the Phenomena Project. I think it was Phenomena Project 2, where they found out time differentials in different areas of the world where
Mhm.
time was experienced differently, especially in caverns. And so
Wow.
I mean, we're could be literally dealing with a civilization that's not right underneath our noses. Like, I mean, it is, metaphorically, but it's here.
Yeah.
And I said this on the Danny Jones show. It's one of Paulino's theories, but it's like, okay, that sometimes you have these two coexisting civilizations. Sometimes they create a shared space to where they can traverse. Now,
Mhm.
even in hauntings, we have cases of shadow figures and entities they'll open their own doors. So you'll have one that'll open up a door and then it'll walk through the closet. Or vice versa. It's crazy. They'll open the door, then open the door to the closet, and just walk right through the wall of the closet.
It's making you think
S-
of Peter Pan. Peter Pan in his
yes.
shadow, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the idea then would be that we see them, or at least we interact with them only when that shared space exists, right?
Mhm.
And then they go into their dimension. It's kind of, we now become a substrate, whatever. So that's a theory that's worth considering. But at the end of the day, I think that disclosure is being bottled up, not merely because it's religious fundamentalist. I think there's some smoke to that fire. But we've got, again, I grew up Pentecostal, so I've had these conversations all my life. And I could tell you one thing, if these people believe they were demons, they would consider telling the world, or they would consider disclosure as an act of evangelizing.
Right.
I grew up Pentecostal. Every altar would be
Yeah.
full. Every hour would be closed. Every head would be bowed. Right,
Yeah.
and they would have revival. And so there's
Yeah.
something. But people, I was formerly Christian. It's like, okay, like, but are you actually understanding what could be going on here?
Yeah.
And so people say, okay, well, they're just fundamentalists that are trying to control the narrative. It seems like that's a narrative. Uh, in that, again, that if they did tell the truth, here's the question. It's possible they don't want to trigger a greater degree of the hitchhiker effect. If,
Oh, man, and what's so cool about that
yeah,
too? I
uh
just did a great episode with the guy, with the doctor David Kaiser, who wrote a book called How the Hippies Saved Physics,
mm,
and there's a lot of there's this concept that we're not really sure how it works of either quantum entanglement,
yeah,
as in once the on a quantum level, but we don't know again how these things work, how these entities
yeah,
work. But once we become acquainted with them, we might establish this kind of connection that
mm,
allows an extended.
brings them.
Exactly, and I was
Um,
also and
mm,
just I'm sorry, just the
yeah,
the second part of that would be also the conscious theory, the observer effect, meaning
yeah.
the people that are open to experiencing it tend to probably experience it, unless
hmm
there's a lot of cases where that doesn't happen though, right? Like that gentleman that you told me about.
Still though, I get what you're saying, and I completely agree. Uh, in the early 50s, when the Collins elite were established, um, there was a paper being floated around. Basically, the paper said that these beings may, we got, plausible deniability here. They may exist in some substrate where a weird physics um, kind of
Mhm.
allow them to be here. So the idea then would be the more you believe in them, the more they manifest. And so my thing now is when people like to simplify the position of the Collins elite and then try to drag religion into this and say, well, see, the whole church, all the church, no, then it's arguments against religion, period. Right. And the religion
Mhm.
shouldn't have a thing to say about the phenomenon. It's okay then to tell the phenomenon, stop manifesting as religious figures. Because,
Right.
somewhere we've got to look at all of the narratives and realize that a lot of these are just their propaganda. And that's where I'm at, and there's such a gap too. Anyways, you were gonna say
Wait, can you
something.
give
I
me some
know.
examples of that? Give me some
Yeah.
examples of what you think would be considered propaganda in that kind of sense.
Um. Okay. Number one, that and this is gonna get me burned at the stake.
That's
Uh,
okay.
that
Not
it's
for me.
just it's that. how do I phrase this? Okay, so people will say, Nathaniel, they're just demons. Just say they're demons. It's like, okay, what does that do for us exactly? I
Right.
mean, that may get you a good comment in a show or something, a nice pat on the back. Thank you for, but it doesn't do anything. Doesn't say anything about the phenomenology. It doesn't say anything about their mechanisms. Doesn't say any, I mean, there's way more going on than just uh, the horns and hooves aspect of it. And then you have this idea, okay, and I've had conversations with people just like this. We'll just say they're gin. Or, and they'll spell it like it's alcohol, like liquor, the way gin spelled in liquor, but those places don't even say it's gin. It's like, maybe scotch? I don't know. No.
Right.
Um, but again, what happens is you take like 3 or 4 pieces of data or 2 or 3 manifestations, and then you build a theory on the imagery, right?
Mhm.
And then, well, it's smokeless fire, it's plasma, it's definitely gin. Or, or it's deceiving, the phenomena is deceiving, therefore it's demonic. Um, the problem is that even within demonology, there are meaning-bearing inconsistencies that even Thomas Aquinas had issues with. Even some of the rabbis were like, what is going on here? Of course, you have your Dibuk, you have your Ibur, you have your Shadim.
Mhm.
Um, the problem, though, is there are instances where, even especially, and I stumbled over this with my Ikigai research, where it was like, none of this fits what
Right.
these women were experiencing. And the church, whatever church, I think it's the Catholic, they're looking at this victim and they've got this long list. Whoosh. Here, I'll do the left hand. Whoosh. You know, and they're interrogating this woman because they're trying to charge her with a crime.
Mhm.
This is unbelievable, by the way. This is Father Sinistrari's research. It's a Franciscan priest. And like, okay, you copulated with it. Well, yes, I did. Okay, was it a beast? I don't think it was. Okay, so we can't charge you with the crime of bestiality, right? Or was it a man? No, it wasn't a man. I don't know what it was. Okay, so we can't charge you with adultery. At the end of the day, you're looking at an entity that was leaving sigils and secretions on the bodies of these experiencers.
Yeah.
What is that? Is that an incorporeal entity? Is that a fallen angel? If that is a fallen angel still copulating with women,
Ooh, right.
right?
Right.
And
That and that's kind of been popping up all over the place, that biblical verse from the end of, Genesis
of
with,
course, yeah,
B'nai
yeah,
Elohim and the Nephilim and all that. And, there's obviously it's funny, for the B'nai Elohim, there's multiple translations. I grew up speaking Hebrew, I'm
yeah,
Orthodox Jewish, and,
yeah.
and one of the and I'm su I believe I think I even heard you say this, I don't remember though, but, one of the definitions of B'nai Elohim, Elohim could mean judge, or Elokim in the context would be God with a
Yeah.
godly name, and so, like, the children of the powerful, the children of the elite, not dissimilar from what we see with the Epstein kind of situation, right?
Mhm.
Or, where this
Yep.
entire so either way, or by the way, it could be both truths at one time.
There we go.
Which
2 things
could
can
very
be
well
true.
which could very well
Yeah.
be the case, and we keep on looking at things like they're mutually
We
exclusive bits of information, and they're not necessarily.
Right, right, and what's been frustrating to me lately is to hear the Nephilim researchers kind of just fumble over this,
Mhm.
and it has been taxing because then it's like, and people hear what they wanna hear, so I say, that, I have a problem with a demon copulating with a woman.
Yeah.
They hear Nathaniel doesn't believe fallen angels can copulate with women. I didn't say that. They don't get it, and it's like, that was that, you know what I mean? And then they're like, and then somebody comes back around like, "Well, of course demons can't copulate with women." It's like, well, that's my whole point. That's what I said, right? And it's funny because, again, people, they don't know where to put my research. It's like, it's kind of lonely at times, in the field. But my point being is that there is a significant issue there. If people want to say, okay, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of Son of Man. Okay, that's fine. But the problem is that version of hybridism has happened
Right.
for thousands of years. So we have to explain not the fact that there's a gap, the fact that there never was a gap.
right?
You
Or
see where I'm going?
or that it stopped ever.
There we go. Exactly right. So that falls apart, brother. And right. And then we get into this aspect of, well, of course angels can copulate with women, but that's not what we're dealing with here. It's okay. Then what is that? Are they still falling? I mean, okay, okay. And
Well, once
so
they're down, when they're down, and also we don't know that these genes. I mean,
Mhm.
it's funny because we get so caught up in terminology and
Uh,
words, and it's really a huge problem. And
yeah,
even if we're speaking the same language, you get a hard time with it, right?
yeah,
I did conversation with a professor, a philosophy professor, and he's like, "I don't believe in God." I'm like, "I don't know what do you what's God like, what's your definition of God?"
yeah.
Because, like, I probably don't believe in a big guy in the sky with the gray beard that, like, laughs when we do good things,
Yeah, you don't believe
that's
in
not.
Zeus? Okay, that's cool, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
so you and I are on the same page about that. I believe in God, but I don't believe that that's what God is, and
no.
and so a lot of times you get caught up in this, but there's a lot of literature, and, especially coming from the Jewish world, that
Mhm,
talks about this kind of, I don't know whether it's a gene or a trait that
mhm,
was kind of split since even the beginning of Genesis with all the children of Abraham,
mhm,
and you have Jacob and Esau, and you have, I mean, and then you have these kind of micro traits within the individual tribes that kind of have
mhm.
to be fleshed out and worked out, because if they come to manifest in a particular way, it causes complete destruction. And, like, you
Yeah,
could see that, like, and there's no necessarily relationship between greatness being good or bad, as
yeah.
opposed to just existing as this incredible force on this world.
I agree. I agree, and it's because we get trapped in language that it gets back to Martin Buber's work, I Am Now. We get trapped in these corners, and nobody's like, "Hey, listen, we could be talking about the same thing in a different way."
Right.
And then you get, Christopher Hitchens' idea that we always look at people as if the only thing we share is the lowest common denominator, and it's like, no, there's
Mhm.
more than that. And that's something that I learned after I left Pentecostalism there, and I just, because I couldn't wear shorts as a kid, I couldn't watch television, couldn't. It was almost orthodox in a different version. I mean, it really was.
Mhm.
Like all the women didn't cut their hair; they wore skirts, all
Mhm.
that. But then I got out of that, and I kind of looked around. I was like, man, there's some really good people out there,
Mhm.
really, really cool people. But the whole Nephilim thing is frustrating because mm, whenever I kind of converse with researchers that are involved in that, it's like they don't understand the entire taxonomy of demonology or even what the cases and data suggest. And,
Well,
so
it's
that,
not like it probably is. It probably is that they don't understand it, I mean, I'm sure that's
yeah,
what the case is.
yeah,
That everyone tries to put information into these little shelves of that, like, that already I think of it like a clothing drawer. Like, you
yeah,
try to put this into the sock drawer, it's like it needs its own drawer. It's not a sock, like, yeah, it's not
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
T-shirt. It's not a pair of underwear. You gotta figure out a new place to put it.
Right, right. In that ongoing conversation, again, you have people like, okay, just say it's gin, just say it's this. And that's all we have to know.
Yeah.
And it's an injustice to our species. I'd much rather, like, okay, call it what you want. We're looking at the mechanisms.
Mhm.
How is it that they can induce people into a dreamlike state? How long of interfacing before they can do that? And so that's why I've kind of delved into parapsychology, because it's not just understanding their pathology or understanding their behavioral patterns, what they value,
Mhm.
what they do, the physical evidence they leave behind. Is it repeatable? I had one case here in Ohio where the same entity was visiting the same family the same week of the same month every year.
What?
Yeah,
For how
October,
long?
for about 3 or 4 days.
No, for how many years, I mean?
Well, I haven't talked to them in years, but at the time it was during COVID, so it had already been there for 3 years.
Wow.
Every
Crazy.
October, every October, and yeah, and it was that particular case study where very weird. We were doing the investigation, and the housewife is like, she's white knuckled, shaking the dishes on the table, and the husband had challenged the entity, and he got smitten, like literally, like beaten up in the middle of the night, and he got Bell's
Wow.
palsy, and so he's like, like he's paralyzed on one side. But Yeah, every week in the month of October, it would climb into bed. And so, what is that? Because I grew up hearing that they're here to steal and kill and destroy, and they just want to, right? They want to destroy you, or the Catholic version. Well, you're made in God's image, and they hate you for that. It's like that's kind of I don't know. I don't even want simple. Honestly, it's like what? Like, these, what? I mean, it's kind of like a bumper sticker, right? Like, well, just, slap it on the card and, it makes sense. No, there's something else going on here. And it's because of that dogma that we've never really grasped. Number one, their abilities, their intentions with us. And sometimes we've missed the physical evidence left behind by the phenomenon merely because we put it in this box. Did not know this thing can materialize objects out of thin air.
Mm.
We did not know that. The only references, at least in religion, we had was, okay, demoniacs coughing up objects they did not ingest. Okay, that's fine. That's an apport. Well, that's when I got into parapsychology, it was like my mind was blown because I'm like, oh my God, I was never told this.
Yeah.
And so,
There's a lot like that.
right. And even now, there's a lot of people, the Christian researchers who I have respect for. They're like, well, you shouldn't even research this. It's like, well, that is why we are so profoundly ignorant of the phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody, again, we're forbidden to go. I'm not saying go out there conjure it. I'm against that, obviously. I've told, but what I'm saying is, at least from the scientific method, go in there, document what you can. Because if all we have are stories from the Family Christian Bookstore, we're at a loss.
Yeah.
A complete and utter loss. And when the phenomenon rears its ugly head, we will be completely outclassed. Why? It's not that the data wasn't there. It was. It's just we limited ourselves. And
There's a lot of things in life that we do that too.
I think so, brother. And it's to our own demise. And it is frustrating, And I see that all the time. It's like, well, you shouldn't be researching that subject. It's like, well, who are you to tell me that?
Right.
Sorry, that's me.
What do you do when,
Right.
no, it's true though, especially if you're not going to if you're not going to put the time or effort into it, and you're not going to, if you're not going to acknowledge the data points, and you're not going to,
Yeah.
then what do you really, what are we doing over here?
What's the whole point? Yeah.
I want to know, what do you do when you have data, or like,
Mhm.
what's it like when you don't know how it fits in yet? And like,
Oh God. Usually
what? Yeah,
I, I disassociate.
that's the
I'm
best
not
way,
lying.
for
No, I mean,
sure.
I don't want to, no, but I stumble over something. And again, man, I'm ADHD. And so there's a lot of things I'm not good at. But when I do get like a hint of something, or if I'm on the trail of something, especially a data point that doesn't fit, I want to know anything and everything I can about that.
I see. So you don't have it. So how often does your working understanding of this kind of stuff change throughout the years? Because you keep on getting these new data points,
Yeah.
or you keep, like, how does that look?
Well, the research I'm doing now, even with Steve Mera, and we've kind of learned this about the phenomenon that we are in a certain area of research where anything and everything we get that's relevant, not something that's cool, that'll give us hype points on an interview, or, it might sound cute, but it doesn't hold weight. But something that's germane, that's profound and meaningful, that helps us understand other cases we've had and research we've
Mhm.
done. Whenever we accomplish that, it's usually right after we trip over the phenomenon.
Right.
And what do I mean by that? I mean, like looking at ancient feudal magic in Mesopotamia, and how hybridism, at least missing fetus syndrome, may have something to do with that. And then out of nowhere, you feel watched. You have the hitchhiker effect. Why? Because you, again, I liken it to the Matrix when Neo, there's that other black cat. We're not supposed to see that,
Mm-hmm.
or we're not supposed to see that yet, and yet we do. And so what I've learned, and I didn't have this maturity back in the day, I would just go out there, blurt it all over podcasts, Right. And sometimes I have no idea what it meant. I was like, hey, listen, I think what's going on, and afterwards I'm like, what the, and then later on I matured into it and I realized that I'll stumble over something. And I mentioned this in an interview, I think yesterday, where it's a lot like Alan Greenfield, the occult researcher. He had, was given Albert Bender's, I guess, okay, let me back up. Photographs he was given of Albert Bender's attic. And being an occult writer and researcher, he was the first person to point out that Albert Bender was using a ritual altar in the attic to contact the others.
Did he describe the ritual altar?
He did not. He did
Ah,
not.
man, I'm so curious because I'm
I am
also
too.
curious how much this relates to, there is a very interesting, one of the things I'm really appreciative about my upbringing for
Yeah.
is that, I have speaking growing up speaking Hebrew gives me a lot of more depth and insight into translating these texts over, right? So
Hmm.
I could understand root words of certain words or different contexts of different words that might be English translated the same, but
Yeah.
in Hebrew might mean a totally different thing.
That is
And
true.
and so one thing that people use, there's a difference between altars. There's one something called the matseva, which is
Hmm.
a big slab of stone that is just
Hmm.
like you walk upon it, you walk in the street and just see a big boulder and like it's big enough to fit something there and like you use
Right.
it. Or there's a mizbeach, which is a mizbeach, which was at the cha at the end, which
Hmm.
has which is actually built. It's something that man puts
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
in order to call down God's spirit.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I think until Moses potentially,
Hmm.
I think everyone used matzevas, the slabs.
Hmm.
Maybe it was Abraham was the first one to do that. Is it Abraham or Moses? It was one of the two. Were the first one to switch over from
I think it
using
was
just a
Abraham.
stone, yeah, you come across, and instead he would build these actual things. I saw your face light up, so I'm curious about what your response is going to be.
Well, I'll tell you what kills me, man. Because and I'm glad you have this. That we're having this conversation because my father would fly Hebrew because my dad's a pastor. So back then he would fly Hebrew
Oh,
scholars in from Israel, and we'd have a time. We used to hang out, and um, and what I always get though is that, and you're gonna love this as a linguist. They're Nephilims, Nathaniel. What's wrong with that? Nephilims. It's like, don't have to put an S. It's already plural.
hmm
Or Nephilims with a U. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. So anyway, so I do share that. It's funny, but I don't know what kind of altar it was. I don't know what it looked like, but what caught my curiosity was that he had an altar and it wasn't decor. See, what had happened was he had hired a lady, Albert Bender did, to decorate his attic, and he was kind of like not a sacred space. I don't want to use that terminology, but it was like he wanted it to be weird,
yeah.
abstract, you know. And so people could be like, well, of course the altar was designed to be a part of the decorum or the decor. It's like, no, 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 it wasn't. He was actually using it, and it's stuff like that that makes me wonder what we're dealing with. And furthermore, if people say, well, why do these things need spaceships? I would say, well, why do they want altars?
Right.
Somewhere in the middle, I think, is the answer to this. If there is an answer, obviously. Uh, but what are we going to do in the field when Lukatsky and Stratton start to reveal the fact that people believed they're extraterrestrials and that demonology, religion, has no role to play in this? What are they going to do when they say, hey guys, by the way, we're being haunted by entities that are appearing as deceased people in houses? Jay Stratton's young son is, I think he's a hearing disability, and the shadow figures were hissing in his head, screeching at him, running across
Oh,
the walls.
man.
What they're not realizing, this field's not
Oh,
realizing,
man.
is there's only one field that did their
Yeah.
best to, so I'm going to
Yeah.
document the taxonomy of those entities. And guess what?
Right.
It's not ufology. Now we can take the religious language away. That's fine. But at the end of the day, and I'm getting pumped, they're going to have to come along, knock on the door of a scholar or a researcher and say, what do you know about apparitions of dead people haunting you and scratching you at nighttime? That's where the conversation's heading. And these people who are like, well, if the Collins elite don't want it out, okay, fine. Forget about the Collins elite. I don't even agree with a lot of their stuff, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't even agree with a lot of the Nephilim research.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, there's gonna have to be a meeting of the minds and a compromise to where they acknowledge we don't have an answer for that. Why? Because they were never in that field of research. They always frowned upon it. They said it was too dogmatic and that was just religious fundamental. No. But what happened was these people needed assistance from the hitchhiker effect. And long before J. Allen Hynek existed, see where I'm going? Oh my God, I'm getting passionate. Long before the field of ufology existed, this existed.
Yeah.
And it's intimately connected to the same intelligence. They're just now realizing their research. It's crazy stuff, man.
How much does consciousness
Mm,
do you think play in the role? I think it has everything to do with it, and I
absolutely.
think I'm really what some I've been working through this idea. I'm still not sure where I'm going with it, but I
Yeah,
think that the next stage of humanity is us realizing that our brains
yeah,
are just a portion of the way that well, of what the real us is.
yeah.
And that there is and that by and I think AI is going to be linked with that. I think that we're gonna as AI develops, we're gonna realize what's our brain and what's our us. And like we're gonna like
Yeah.
learn about it from what it isn't, by canceling out.
Yes. I think consciousness plays a massive role in this, a profound role, even where uh, I study research interface events. So when a phenomenon manifests to us, or at least an entity does,
Mhm.
what's actually happening? What are the physical, I guess I'm going to use this term, evidences, I guess, that are left behind on the body, in the PTSD symptoms, if anything's left inside the home, all of that. And what I've learned, though, in my research is that when these beings manifest, they will wear an interface. And a lot of times that form is designed to hide its function.
Ooh, right.
That's what we were told by virtue of the ancient mind. Don't believe the form. There's a function behind that. We're not, and what I'm doing now is testing the form. I'm teaching people, and I call it finding the seam in the dream, because there is a glitch in some of these interfaces, and it's like, oh, okay, you're definitely not who you appear to be.
Mm.
And even deeper than that, the form's not just designed to hide the function; the form is designed to hide the origin as well. So Dr. Carla Turner had a case study. She was an abductionist and worked with experiencers, and this gentleman had encountered an entity named Maya, who uh, appeared, that's form, as a Pleiadian.
And what's
That
that? For anyone that doesn't know.
that's an extraterrestrial species.
Okay.
And the idea, though, behind this is that she appeared as a Pleiadian form in order to convince him of her origin.
Mm.
So it's not just that the form's hiding function. Now it's the form's designed to inspire belief in origin. Oh, that's where. Now, what's crazy about this is that after a while of interfacing with this entity, the entity changed. I don't believe she changed her appearance. I believe, again, she was manipulating the perception of the observer. But the point is, she chose an interface that was designed to inspire an extraterrestrial origin when even the interface was a lie. So we're
Even the
being
interface
manipulated.
was a lie.
Even the interface. In other words, yes, the form itself is a lie. But watch this. If the form is designed to inspire origin, you look like a Pleiadian, you're extraterrestrial. In other
Mhm.
words, if I didn't look like I was a Pleiadian, you wouldn't think I was an extraterrestrial. So the
Right,
form was designed to lie about the origin.
right.
So that's the interface. So now I'm
Oh, man, dude. I have to mention it, and I'll let you go. I'll let
yeah.
you, like, rant for the last 10 minutes about this
Mm,
because I wanna know as much as what you think about this.
yeah.
In Disclosure Day, the Hansel and Gretel scene where they
Yeah.
where and just tying in fairy tales, but
Yeah.
the most
Folklore and all
important
that.
part of
Yeah.
it was so well done, and also, by the way, I freaking love the music. The music in that movie really helped
Hmm.
just really shape the whole narrative, but that like what you're saying, the fairy tale, the house in the woods, the Hansel and
Yeah.
Gretel, the gingerbread cookies leading up to this house is to hide its appearance. How much of that movie do you think is is based on reality? Because I think it's like
Uh, it's
I
very
think it's a lot.
close. It's
I think
very
it's a lot. I mean,
close. Of course, you have the psionic assist that the individual was using, right? He's got this mouth, mouth guard, and everything.
yeah.
That's called a psionic assist. He's projecting himself into another person. That's called possession technology. At least I would consider that. But this idea of using archetypes or, and again, interfaces to conceal their actual form. What's so fascinating, and people don't understand this, they, maybe they do, I don't know. That okay, you have the cardinal, and you have, I think it was the fox, right?
Mhm,
So you have, okay, you have, the bird has two legs, the fox has four. But even as they're observing these entities and they're masking themselves, as a bird or a fox, a fox's gait is different than that of a gray. Not just the footprints, the size
mhm.
of the walk, right? And
Right.
the spacing. Same thing with the bird. And so you have the image of the bird and the image of the fox, but then you look down and you have the footprints of a
Mm.
gray. So when I see that, it's fascinating. And I'm not saying they that all of this derived from my history of lecturing about this. Obviously, it's ridiculous. But in times past, I've talked about that, where forget about the images and aliases. We got to look at the footprints in the snow. I've said that because that's behavior, that's function.
Right.
And this is why, again, Lakatsky and Stratton and Allsap, all of these guys, they realize the same thing, that these are aliases. And that when people say, well, it's just extraterrestrials and UFOs, well, why couldn't it just be ghosts too? Because we're seeing apparitions of the deceased that's intimately connected to the UFO. So what's actually going on here? Now, there are two theories that I'm entertaining. One is that the veil is in fact thinning.
Mhm.
I have to entertain this, by the way. Not that I believe in it, but at
Really?
least to acknowledge.
There's a mass rise of consciousness about this topic.
Yeah, yeah.
Massive.
Everybody's talking about it. Yeah. So then the idea would be that yes, the veil is thinning, and that those children were in fact, you know, transitioned, deceased, and yes, that they were trying to communicate with people, and people, of course, they would be terrified, or or those were not children at all.
Mhm.
And what this is doing, it's forcing us in the field to say, we're going back to the drawing board again. We don't know what this is. We don't know what they want. We don't know what they represent. We can, and I've heard people say, and and I agree to an extent. We don't know. It's like a lion. It's nature. They devour. They're predatory because they're hungry. But then they'll come and purr. They love their family and all that. That's fine. But my point is, the same people that teach their kids not to take candy from strangers are now pushing a movement to contact these beings without realizing or without even caring. See, again, they're going to learn the true face of this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot imagine. I don't have children. And that article tore me up, by the way. And I put it up on X and I took it down. I was like, man, I don't even want to.
Yeah.
because I can't imagine having a child and then waking up in the middle of the night to an
Oh,
apparition of one
yeah.
on my foot on my bed. That, and I don't care what anybody says, by the way, of all the forms you could choose,
Mhm.
why that?
Yeah.
I could deal. I've seen shadow figures. In my youth, I saw again. I was a kid. I was 8 years old. Saw an apparition underneath the bed in the house that we were going to buy. So none of that. I mean, that. mm, my point is this: there's a difference between saying, "Okay, I saw an apparition of a child," and an apparition of a deceased child. And what I'm pointing to is exactly what that experiencer told me about in after his abduction, is that there's something about what they saw in the apparition that made them believe
Right.
it's not just a healthy child, it's something else. So what is it? I can tell you this from my observation: a lot of the phenomenon operates like a program, and it has its own limitations. It operates off of a learning matrix. Even some of the entities that use an interface, sometimes they can't hold that interface for
Really?
an extended period of time. No.
And
Uh,
what's battling it? Do we know, is there evidence,
um,
like, the forces that or is there a common theme maybe of things that in
yeah.
common that force it to lose its ability to hold it?
I'm gonna throw this out there.
Okay,
Um,
throw it out there.
and I've been
Speculate.
testing this with experiencers. Again, we're looking for answers. Um, okay, so I worked with a lady a long time ago, who was abducted as a child, abducted by her favorite cartoon characters.
No.
Yeah,
But I had ah, sorry, please finish, go
you're
ahead.
good, dude. You're
Um,
good. But then she got older, hit puberty, shot up, and was it got into boys and dating and sports and stuff. I was like, I don't even read those comic books. I don't even watch cartoons anymore. That's weird. And then an intelligent electricity manifested in her room one night. She's like, oh my God, it's been years since they've shown up. I'm going to be prepared to be taken. And out of nowhere, here comes again that interface, that mask. It's pulling it over its face, right? Not literally, but figuratively.
yeah.
It's the cartoon character. And she's laughing at it. You mean to tell me, you're a Mickey Mouse, you're a 3 foot Mickey Mouse? Wasn't. But when she questioned the form,
Mhm. So our consciousness could be a tool.
there we go, buddy. It didn't know what to do, and so it would kept glitching in and out. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so it's reaching for a learning matrix, right? It's so in that moment, and we've had success in breaking. It's called a virtual reality scenario, right? Where sometimes the environment changes, and sometimes it's not the environment; it's just the entity. But what we're doing now is instructing people, experiencers, to create that scene in the dream, to push back on the form. And what happened was when it couldn't it kept glitching in and out, like looking for another form to manifest
Mhm.
as. And this individual told me that its eyes got big. It looked into her eyes, and she said, this changed my entire paradigm. She said, Nathaniel, it was measuring my belief in its image.
Wow.
What is that? I'm telling everybody, well, that's just a demon. Okay, okay, right? Or that's just an extraterrestrial. That's fine.
Mhm.
But whatever we're dealing with is something that is intimately connected to human consciousness. And it's almost, I'll give you another case study. Again, dealing with this concept of, do you believe I am who I appear to be and how much? 60%, 70%, right?
Right.
It's sampling the interface. Oh my God. And so then you move to even one of Mike Clelland's case studies, because he wrote a book on owls and symbolism and all that. And he had a case study of a man who was looking at an entity, and in his head he hears the word owl, owl, owl with an L, owl, owl. It's like, who's saying that? Owl. Next thing you know, he's looking at this creature, and the creature shapeshifts into an owl and leaves. So there is a co-creative nature to the interface, not
Mhm.
to the intentions of the entity wearing it. Those are
Right.
two separate, right, things. So the phenomenon's highly reflective. Um, but I'm looking forward to the conversation changing to from rather, well, we're just dealing with, you know, can I say this real quick? I don't want to picture out,
Please,
but the
please.
idea though is again that ufology is kind of couched in its own niche field. It's not, by the way. Okay. And when people say, okay, we saw orbs in the sky, well, we first saw them in haunted houses. And okay, and orbs in the haunted houses were projecting apparitions. All altitude does not diminish their ability to project
Right,
constructs.
right.
So what we're dealing with, and I'll tell you, even Jay Stratton's book and Lakatsky's research, Future Visions, and all that, they had actual, and I'm telling you, in his article, it said cartoonish. Remember,
Mhm.
cartoonish looking flying saucers hovering in the
Oh,
houses
man.
that are a part of the hitchhiker effect. So I need everybody to pay attention to what I'm about to say. That means we have UFOs in homes and we have hauntings in the sky. There are no more fields of research.
Wow. You and we're at the hour. I wanna leave you with 2 quick things on that because that
Yeah,
flew by way too fast. Number
I know,
1 is
brother.
the only recurring dream that I pretty much have ever had was when I was a kid till I was probably 13 or 14, I'd imagine.
Okay.
When I was a kid, meaning 6 or 7, of Peter Pan and the crocodile teaming up on me. And Peter Pan was always, floating around in the sky, and the crocodile was always right below me, and I was
Yeah.
and they were working together. And that was the only recurring dream I really ever had. I've had 1 or 2 where they'd recur 2 or 3 times, but this would happen, and, like, I had this dream pretty frequently.
Mhm.
And I'm only thinking about that now. And then the day after Disclosure Day dropped,
Yeah.
which, I don't know what the heck is going on with these UFO files or not. I don't know what
Yeah,
to
I
do with
don't know
them.
either.
But I like the older documents, and I saw a 1952 document that I'll forward you after we get
Yeah.
off, where the CIA
Mm.
sent this memo to everyone: the president, the national head of security, national defense, the Marines, the Navy, everyone, right?
Yeah.
And basically saying 2 things: the UFO phenomenon is deemed to be not uh, aggressive militarily.
Yeah.
Essentially, to us, does not pose a military threat. The threat that it poses is the government will lose control, and so
Yeah.
therefore we will have, and this is crazy, a policy, a stated policy. I'll send you the document of
Yeah.
debunking and education,
Oh, gee. I believe that
and
absolutely.
that's their
From the
policy.
government? Oh, yeah.
So, I'll leave you with that because after everything that we talk about, everything we're saying, and again, UFOs, like you just said, doesn't have to be in the sky, it could be in the house.
Yep. Of course.
And it doesn't have to be malevolent, it doesn't have to do anything to you, but
Mm.
it might be subject to our consciousness. It might be subject to, we
Yeah.
might realize that the world is way bigger than we will realize, and this is happening one way or the other.
Terence McKenna, right?
That's
It's not
right.
only stranger than you think, it's stranger than you can think.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So, yeah.
Um, Nathaniel, this is a ton of fun, man. I hope to have you back. That
Yes.
happened way too fast, but we and I will have plenty of hangouts and plenty of recordings, I hope, down the line. Thank you so much for taking
Not
the
a
time with
problem,
me.
buddy. I'll text you later, Ben. You have a good night.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Later.